Rust, a language that emphasizes performance, type, and memory safety. The language first appeared in 2015 and is often used in building operating systems, kernels, and other fields where memory safety is crucial. After watching this video, you'll know the idea of the language. The approach I've chosen is making a program with everything you need to know. Please, if you find this video helpful, consider subscribing, liking the video, leaving a comment, and telling me what you'd like to see next. Local variables in Rust can be either mutable or immutable. Global variables can be defined using static or const. Const is the common case, while static can be unsafely mutated. But you should avoid using unsafe because the idea of Rust is, as I said, to be safe. But the main difference between const and static is that const makes the variable simply get put into those places where it's used during compilation, while static has a memory address and works as a regular variable. Using const would theoretically give you faster runtime but bigger executables, while static would do the opposite for both. So let's make a variable called a, which is passed into a function called job. Because we don't want the job function to take the full ownership of the variable, we want it to only temporarily borrow the variable until it finishes. If you don't exactly know what I mean, I highly recommend you to watch the video about borrowing that I have made. But here's the idea. Rust has the borrowing mechanism to prevent data races. So that means a variable can be owned in one place at a time. Borrowing allows you to make someone only borrow the variable instead of taking the full ownership. You can also think of borrowing as using references. The function we've created has to add 1 to the variable if it is a number, and reverse it if it is a string. Rust is statically typed, but we need to somehow tell it that the argument can be either a string or a number. But how? Well, let's make an enum that contains either a string or a number. Rust is some sort of combination of normal enums and unions. So components of an enum can store values. Now we can say that the argument has the type of string or a number. And we can pass either a string or a number. Well, how can we check what type has been given to the function? We can use match cases or normal if statements. If the variable is a string, we reverse it by splitting it into characters and then using the ref method, and then collecting into a string. Those generics are pretty cool, by the way. I'll talk about them in one of my next videos. If it is a number, we very easily increment it like so. Now, let's also say we need to print out everything until the incremented number. We can use ranges for that. We get another assignment from our boss for this incredible program to asynchronously print out everything until the original number and everything until the incremented one. Well, to make it async, we can use threads, like shown. Let's say we need the prints to happen at least every 3 seconds. What we can do is store the last print timestamp, and if more than 3 seconds have passed, we just do the print and update the timestamp. Working with time, from my experience, is much nicer in Rust than in C. Now, let's say that if the variable is a number, we instead need to print out a random number between it and 0. If you're on a Unix-like OS, you can easily call a command. Now we need a function which gets a U8 variable and checks if the variable is valid. If the value of the variable is greater than 8, we need to return valid, and otherwise return invalid. This is already pretty neat, but you may have noticed that in some part of the video, I used unwrap. Now you're wondering what it is, but you should really be wondering what options are. Well, an option essentially contains either some and the value itself inside it, or none without the value. Let's go ahead and integrate an option into our function, and it's much nicer now. All unwrap does is that it gets the value itself if it's wrapped into some, and if you definitely know the value is not none, because you'll get an error if you unwrap a none. Rust is a language where extreme power comes with complexity. Do not be afraid of it, because first you'll hate it, but then you'll get addicted to it, just like I did.